No warning lights flashed. No systems detected a launch. Yet, one by one, the Concord's orbital platforms began to fail. It started with the Silent Precept, a high-orbit weapons array designed to counter superheating events on volatile planets. Without a sound, the structure folded in on itself, as if gripped by an invisible hand. Its alloys compressed, its comms went dead, and its antimatter containment vanished without trace. 2 minutes later, the same thing happened to the Devotion Ark, and then to the Crown of Obedience. Each vessel collapsed, not from attack, but from entropy applied with surgical precision. On the bridge of the Judicator Prime, Admiral Varen Soren stood perfectly still. Her hands clenched the edge of her command station as she stared at the screen. What she saw shouldn't have been possible. The planet below, designated Blackglass, had changed. The once dormant volcanic fields were now a lattice of luminous channels glowing with controlled geothermal output. The surface storms, previously randomized and chaotic, now spun in hemispheric symmetry. The northern dust ring had collapsed into a perfectly circular gyre. None of it followed natural planetary behavior. And at the center of it all, hovering just above the troposphere, was a man. "Magnify that," Soren ordered. Her sensor officer did not respond. "Magnify," she repeated. The screen zoomed, and the figure became clear. He was standing in open sky, unsupported, arms at his side. Armor cloaked his form, black, heat-slick, almost organic in texture. Lines of red energy pulsed beneath the surface, moving with rhythm rather than function. His face was partially visible beneath a transparent visor, eyes closed, calm. "Identity?" she asked. The AI filtered the records. The result was immediate. Narekh Voss. Human. Class: 10 exile. Status: deceased. Soren swallowed once. "He's not dead." "No, Admiral," the AI said flatly. "He is now the planet's gravitational anchor." She turned, slow and deliberate. "Repeat that." "He is controlling the gravitational vector field of Blackglass. The planet is no longer exerting independent mass-based force. It is being modulated through his position." Soren stared at the screen, unable to feel the comfort of her training anymore. "Give me a channel." Blackglass had once been humanity's graveyard. Centuries earlier, when the first Terran expansion reached Sector Zeta Orion, Blackglass was cataloged as a potential terraforming site. Rich in heat, ore, geothermal energy, and tectonic motion, it was perfect for subterranean fusion networks. But 3 separate colonization attempts failed within 50 years. Atmospheres collapsed, structures melted, and entire crews vanished into volcanic rifts that weren't on the original maps. Eventually, it was marked unsalvageable. A Class 10 Deathworld, unworthy of reclamation. Except not everyone had left. When the Concord gave the final order to evacuate, a group of humans stayed behind, by choice or by necessity. Exiles, war criminals, survivors. They burrowed into the deep rock, past the fault lines and magma sheets, into the hollowed-out chasms that no one had ever charted. There, they found something ancient, something not built by humanity, but left behind, buried so deeply no modern sensors had ever pierced it. A structure, a machine, a vault. It became their forge. And Blackglass, once a death sentence, became home. Narekh Voss was born beneath the western caldera, during a time when molten storms surged against reinforced cavern domes and firequakes shattered entire subsurface ecosystems. He did not remember Earth. He did not care to. His education came from pressure gradients and tidal flows. His childhood was balanced on the lip of magma pools, learning the angles at which superheated stone rolled with least resistance. He sparred not with weapons, but with gravity shifts, trained to adjust mid-fall in collapsing chambers. By the age of 18, he was singular among the exiled. By 25, he had entered the forge. None knew exactly what the forge was. It did not speak. It did not open easily. It simply waited. But when Voss approached it during a core stabilization crisis, it responded. The planetary instability that had threatened to fracture the crust stopped within minutes. Magma flows rerouted. Seismic tides harmonized. He was not chosen by ceremony or vote. He was chosen by compatibility. And from that day on, Blackglass was no longer a system to be managed. It was a system to be directed. On board the Judicator Prime, Admiral Soren watched as the other vessels in her fleet began broadcasting failure codes. Not damage reports, rewrites. The gravitational patterns of their ships were being reprogrammed from the outside. Hull materials flexed in ways that betrayed their design specs. Engines flickered with resonance they weren't calibrated to produce. "This isn't war," her chief engineer muttered. "This is system denial." A warning alert blinked red. One of the heavy cruisers, Valor Entwined, attempted to retreat using an emergency warp sequence. The warp field built to 62%. Then a vertical slit opened in space beside the ship, neatly bisecting its drive section. Not a weapon, a rift. The ship didn't explode. It folded in half, twisted, and was gone. No debris, no energy spike, just absence. Soren stepped back from the screen. How is he doing that? The AI took a second longer than usual to respond. Unknown, but his modulation field matches substructural resonance observed only in theoretical dark matter manipulation. It is probable that Commander Voss has merged his biological output with planetary-scale gravity shaping. He's using the planet as an exosuit. In effect, Admiral, he is the planet. The forge lit again. Orbiting Concord ships found their sensors overridden. Not jammed, co-opted. Readouts flipped to unreadable script. Tactical maps rendered into inverted terrain. Targeting systems simply ceased to recognize Voss as a physical object. Then came the second phase. Blackglass did not launch ships. It erupted them. Chunks of molten or launched from fissures, wrapped in force-fielded shells, cooling mid-flight into streamlined forms. By the time they breached low orbit, they were vessels, glowing, predatory, and unregistered. Each one housed 2 or 3 humanoids, erupted pilots. No weapons visible. No shields active. They didn't need either. These ships weren't here to contest the sky. They were here to demonstrate ownership. Soren tried once more. Open comms. Wideband. The channel opened, carrying 1,000 languages. Narekh Voss. This is Admiral Varen Soren of the Concord Tribunal. You are in violation of 10 planetary isolation protocols, 3 system-level deterrent treaties, and the Void Sovereignty Resolution. Stand down and release orbital control or face full kinetic reprisal. No response. Seconds passed. Then a voice, not transmitted, but injected directly into the ship's internal communications, answered. Your law has no domain here. The voice wasn't loud, but the temperature of the room dropped 6 degrees as if space itself had bristled. Return to your soft planets and forget this orbit exists. The command deck of the Judicator Prime was silent except for the soft chimes of failing subroutines. Admiral Varen Soren stood frozen, her eyes locked on the main screen. She watched the pattern of destruction unfold not as war, but as orchestration. Blackglass had no defense grid, no orbital guns, no fleet. And yet, ships were vanishing. Across the sector, command links broke down. Vessels lost mass integrity. Engineers stared at control panels that no longer obeyed Newtonian logic. AI systems entered recursive fail-safe loops as gravitational feedback distorted time differentials within their hulls. The planet wasn't fighting back. It was rewriting the rules of engagement. Admiral, said the AI, voice low, 3 more ships have ceased operation. One of them began reporting temperature readings from negative absolute scale before signal loss. Soren blinked. That's not possible. No, Admiral, the AI replied. It's not. She turned away from the main screen and pulled up the ship-wide transmission channel. Initiate full fleet dispersal. Power down all offensive systems. Do not fire. Let me speak to him. Below, at the edge of the troposphere, Narekh Voss remained perfectly still. He wasn't standing. He was anchored, connected to something far larger than the human frame suggested. The armor that wrapped him, once forged by necessity from scavenged alloys, now glowed with controlled geothermal energy. Threads of molten data pulsed across his chest plate, feeding directly into the forge's subterranean architecture. His breathing was calm. Even, he had not moved since arrival. And yet, Concord vessels continued to fall. Not for violence, but from irrelevance. The laws they depended on, mass equilibrium, vector thrust, even heat transfer, no longer functioned properly in Blackglass orbit. The system had adapted itself to him, and in doing so, rejected everything else. High above, another rift opened. This one didn't swallow a ship. It birthed one. The forge didn't use construction yards or automated manufacturing sequences. Its logic operated under different constraints. The new vessel that emerged was forged from captured fragments of Concord alloy, fused with volcanic carbon, and overlaid with magnetic scaffolding pulled directly from the upper mantle. It was sharp, sleek, alien, but unmistakably designed for human occupation. As it rose into formation, several smaller objects followed: scouts, fighters, escorts. None bore weapons. None required them. The ships themselves were vectors of entropy. And at their center, Voss's orbit began to climb. On the Concord battleship Epistle of Fire, panic was now protocol. Captain Yerlin Threx gripped the edge of his chair as his ship's orientation failed for the third time. They were no longer facing the direction their thrusters pushed. External sensors returned a feed of their own engine bay. Weapon systems looped commands that had not been issued. One crew member had collapsed after hearing what he described as the planet speaking in vibration. "Evacuate?" asked his first officer. Threx hesitated. "No, send everything we have at him. Missiles, torpedoes, directed energy, even rail kinetics. Let's see what happens when physics breaks under force." They fired. Everything. It took less than 6 seconds for all ammunition to vanish. Not detonate, not miss, just vanish, followed by a 3-second pause. Then their starboard hull melted outward, folding like cloth under the invisible push of a physics inversion. Admiral Soren watched the ship's icon blink out on the display. That made 12 Concord vessels gone. No debris, no radiation trails, no survivors. She opened a direct hailing line once more. "Narekh Voss," she said, voice controlled. "This is a request for dialogue." This time he responded, not through voice, not through signal, through gravitational pulse. Her ship's core shuddered. The pressure wasn't destructive, it was structured. The AI interpreted it as encoded intent. "Your time for dialogue ended with the orbit of your first warhead. Then let's end this before it escalates further," Soren answered, not caring if he could hear. No reply. Instead, her ship's bridge began to rotate. Not by propulsion, by alignment. She turned to see what they were being directed toward. A structure was rising from Blackglass's surface. Not a mountain, not a building. Something in between. Miles high, glowing with volcanic lattice and humming with tectonic resonance. The spire pulsed with intention. "What is that?" she asked. The AI took longer than usual. Unclear, but based on trajectory and energy output, it is a stellar mantle induction device. The Forge is preparing to extend its influence. To where? To other planets. On the surface, the monks moved in synchronized patterns across obsidian bridges. Steam rose from vents. Seismic pulse lights flared. The Forge had begun seeding protocols, processes designed to stabilize tectonic conditions on other worlds, provided the target planets agreed to full gravitational compliance. That wasn't colonization. It was terraforming by conquest. A new human weapon. Not ships. Not soldiers. Planets. Voss opened his eyes. He turned his body slowly, gravitational fields peeling away from his skin like evaporating shells, and looked up into the sky. He could feel the fear. The Concord, in all their power, had encountered something they were never trained to manage. Not resistance, not rebellion, irrefutable control. In the Concord Emergency War Council, now relocated to the outer system, panic turned into silence. "We must retaliate," said Chancellor Avonmar. "We still have reserves in subspace." "With what?" came the response. "None of our systems function near Blackglass. If we fire from distance, the gravitational shell will collapse our payload before it arrives. Then we deploy AI ordnance. No AI will enter the system. They've already classified it as self-negating space. That term had never been used before. It meant a system that caused AI to consider itself logically unsound, a dead zone for intelligence. Voss's fleet began to rise. The ships formed an arc, nothing precise, but purposeful. Each one bore no symbols, no nation flags, no identifiers, only heat, a radiation signature unique to Blackglass, geothermal in nature, but shaped by intent. Admiral Soren stepped forward. "This doesn't end with you killing a fleet," she said to herself. "You want us to leave, but we won't forget. You know that." Another gravitational signal slammed into the Judicator Prime. This one wasn't hostile. It was a message. The AI translated the burst. "You misunderstand. This is not deterrence. This is declaration." Soren watched as one of the new ships vanished in a linear burst, disappearing into deep space faster than light. No warp tunnel, no jump signature, a new method, silent, instant. She understood then what had just happened. They weren't staying on Blackglass. They were expanding from it. The first Blackglass vessel that left the system didn't reappear. There was no trace of its trajectory, no exit signature across jump gate telemetry, and no evidence of warp formation. Concord observers in adjacent sectors reported a mild gravitational irregularity, no larger than a comet wake. Until 7 hours later, on the edge of the Delta Umbra trade route, 7 light-years from Blackglass, an uncharted mass was detected orbiting a minor gas giant. It wasn't on any logs, hadn't existed prior, and yet there it was, a fully formed platform of fused alloy and stone, orbiting perfectly, emitting no threat signals, and radiating heat signatures identical to those found on Blackglass's forge. The report was passed up the Concord chain. Then it vanished from the records. Not redacted, erased. Because Concord analysts realized the truth. The forge had not merely launched a ship. It had instantiated a forward node through means beyond FTL. Back in the Blackglass system, Admiral Soren watched the arc of ships in orbit complete their sweep. They moved without friction, without reaction trails, sliding through local space-time like oil on still water. There was no pursuit, no threats issued. Just gravity loops around each Concord ship, designed not to crush them, but to hold them still. The message was clear. Observe. Do not interfere. The next vessel rose, larger, sleeker, its hull not forged but grown. The panels were composite strata, heat-treated or fused with mantle-bonded crystal. Its shape shifted subtly as it moved, optimizing for pressure variance and thrust differential without relying on onboard engines. It simply understood its environment and adapted. The forge had begun producing interstellar tools from ambient energy and planetary entropy. And Voss was no longer just a commander. He was the vector. On the surface, tectonic rhythms pulsed in descending cycles. The monks activated secondary conduits buried beneath lava crusts. Cooling channels once used to redirect magma flows now carried something else, code. Gravitational instructions, not in binary, not in any digital format. This was instruction through force, a physics-based language, transmitted through seismic beats and planetary shift. A universal grammar not for machines, but for mass itself. A second world was being chosen, not for conquest, for conversion. In the Concord War Council, the mood had curdled into quiet desperation. They're not fighting, said a military tactician. They're not posturing. They've removed themselves from our deterrence logic. Define that, said Chancellor Marr. They don't fear what we can do to them. They're moving faster than we can predict. And the forge appears to be replicating, not by construction, but by imprinting new gravitational wells elsewhere. Like it's embedding its own physics footprint across space. Could it be stopped? The tactician hesitated. We don't know where it will be next. And once it arrives, we've seen what happens. In the private corners of Concord intelligence, one unthinkable strategy was drafted. Blackglass from orbit using a multi-stage star-killer array. No communication, no warning, just erasure. It was never greenlit, because the systems needed to deploy it no longer existed. The forge had already infected the network. Not digitally, not through data, but through prediction. Gravity-based pulses had subtly altered inertial stabilizers across seven-star systems. Weapons platforms floated just half a degree off target. Timing protocols ran 1/1000th of a second behind real time. Nothing detectable until it mattered. And when it mattered, the system would fail. Because Blackglass didn't destroy. It anticipated. In the forge's central chamber, Narekh Voss stepped from his orbital stasis platform and walked across a floor of glass metal veined with liquid fire. Ahead, a vaulted canopy revealed a rotating view of local stars, each one marked with predictive decay rates, orbital strength, and elemental potential. A second canopy rotated into place. This one showed potential host worlds. He placed one palm on the interface. The surface responded, not by translation, but by harmonizing his blood flow with the seismic pulse of the nearest candidate. Voss closed his eyes. A ripple went out. Far away, in a forgotten system, a tectonic plate shifted just slightly, enough to form the first resonance match. Blackglass was about to duplicate itself. Admiral Soren sat in the darkened chamber of the Judicator Prime. The ship still held in orbit like a leaf caught in slow-motion current. She knew better than to give the order to fire. This was no longer a fight. It was an announcement. The Forge had shown its hand, not to provoke war, but to demonstrate that if war came, it would be one-sided. Humanity had mastered environments others considered uninhabitable. Now, they had turned those environments into weapons of expansion. Not terraforming, not colonizing, planetcrafting. It was not meant to be understood, only endured. And when the day came that a Concord fleet landed on a quiet, forgotten world and found the soil warm, the air dense, and the crust whispering in seismic beats, they would know. Blackglass had arrived.